Good afternoon and welcome to Let's Talk TCI Real Estate. As I come to a close with season 2 of Let's Talk TCI Real Estate, I would like to thank all the guests who have appeared on the show and shared their knowledge with us all. I'm sure that we are all grateful and more knowledgeable because of all of them. Today, I would like to do a recap and highlight some of the points that stood out just as a reminder of the invaluable content that was shared. Of course, there were a few solo shows about the market report and general information about the purchasing process. However, my focus today will be on the guests as I do the year in review. So the season started with the topic of community policing. Sergeant Kevin Clark from the police department shared statistics about crime and shared some of the initiatives that the department has implemented to combat crime in these Turks and Caicos Islands. He went on to explain the policing community model and gave an invitation for the community to reach out and partner with the department. Here is a clip of what Sergeant Kevin Clark had to say.
Our community policing model is building safer communities, one community at a time. We can achieve this. We can build safer communities. Persons, when you hear incidents occurred in a community, it's either persons living in the community doing it, well, someone in the community committing it, or someone from the outside. Therefore, if a community have 100 members in it, and there's one, two, three, four, five persons who are committing these crimes, we need to get rid of them. We need to deal with them. We cannot allow a few persons make us feel unsafe in our own communities, in our own homes. It is we have to take a stand. We either sit down and watch things happen until it happened to one of us and we become the victim of crime, or we stand up against it before it happened. And like you said, Vernica, all of us have our own reasons behind certain things, why we do and why we do not do certain things. But you need to think about your safety and your family's safety. We cannot allow just a handful of people make us feel unsafe and live a life of fear in our own communities. So please hit me up, send me an email, kevin.clark at tcipolice.tc. Let us have a discussion. If you don't have a neighborhood watch group, hit me up and let us discuss how we can get it going. And let me tell you about the importance of a neighborhood watch group. You can also Google it.
We also had Ms. Claudette Dean from J.S. Johnson. She shared about the importance of getting insurance. There are many valuable points that were eye opening, but I specifically wanted to remind everyone about the reason why it is not enough to save on your own, but even better to purchase an insurance policy. Here's a segment from that clip.
Hmm. The truth is, while while some people are wealthy enough to set aside what we would call disaster funds, this practice is not beneficial for most. It is very difficult to save sufficient funds to replace your most valuable assets. Think about it. Disaster happens suddenly and unexpectedly. And can you imagine if you've been saving for a long time, hard, save up all you can to purchase your dream home? Then, when you finally get it within the first year or two, or even less, disaster strike, the worst happen. How much would you have been able to save during the time you purchased your home and a year after to cover that loss? If you have an insurance policy in place, you can certainly have peace of mind despite the inconvenience. Also, you want to remember that there could be multiple events occurring in a 12-month period. So if you are able to set aside $250,000 for your home that burned flat, you have the 250,000, and so you rebuild the property. Within that same 12 months, we enter into the hurricane season, and boom, here comes Hurricane Irma, and that is destroyed. Would you be able to save $250,000 within that short span again to cover your losses?
There are similarities when buying in the United States versus the Turks and Caicos Islands, and one of them is the process of getting started. Here is what George had to say about what you should do when looking to buy real estate in the United States of America.
Process for us when I work with buyers or buying a home is really the first step, which if you look online and look up different things about buying homes for the consumer,
Mhm.
um, getting an agent, finding a great real estate agent is like fourth on the list. And for me, it's always the number one. And the reason it's number one on the list is because that agent is not only going to help you through the entire process, but can also help you find a lender,
Correct.
can counsel you on how to improve your credit score. That lender will, I mean. But finding a good lender. Now, if you have a great agent, then every buyer has some challenges. They may not have a great credit score, or they may not have a huge down payment,
Mhm.
or they're looking for a fixer-upper as opposed to something that's already ready to go. So that agent can right away steer that buyer directly to the right lender and to the right areas in order to get to a point where they can be ready to buy a home.
Mhm.
If you put that agent fourth on that list, then you're really doing a lot of work and making a lot of mistakes and doing a lot of things you may not need to do um, prior to getting that agent. So for me, the number one thing, get yourself a great real estate buyer's agent. And then after that, then that agent will help you and hold your hand through the process of getting pre-approved, um, kind of understanding what they're looking for, walking them through that process of what exactly are you looking for. I know that a lot of buyers think they know what they're looking for, but then when they go through the process and start talking it over with a good agent, then
Mhm.
that agent will purse out exactly what they're looking for.
Correct. It was a pleasure to have Mr. Lewis Walken of Keys Construction on the show to discuss building in the islands of North Caicos. He shared some of the challenges, which were minimal as to what I expected, but assured all that there are companies that are ready and capable of getting your home or development constructed on North Caicos. The new executive team from the Turks and Caicos Real Estate Association were present to introduce themselves and spoke about the importance of the association and the services that are offered. Mr. Richard Sankar clearly explained that one of the important parts of the real estate system, which is the multiple listing system. Here is his explanation in a nutshell of how it works.
I think is one of the most important parts of our association and one of the reasons why we as a destination, as a jurisdiction why we've been so successful. Many larger places, like for example in the UK, they don't have an MLS system. And so you've got to go to every broker. The information might not be accurate from broker to broker. It might not be the most current information. So one of the most significant parts of our success as a community and as a country in real estate, it has to do with the efficiency of how we've got buyers and sellers being able to list their properties on the MLS and buyers being able to go in and get accurate information. That efficiency is really what is directly proportional to how we have done over the last to sellers being able to list their properties on the. So I think that we can't undervalue what it is, and maybe perhaps Chuck can expand a little bit on what I said.
Also, on that same segment, Mr. Mizik, the vice president of the association, he spoke about the benefits of investing in the Turks and Caicos Islands. Here is a segment of that clip.
I think the biggest benefit of buying real estate in the Turks and Caicos is our market. Okay, if you look at our market and the performance of our market over time, it has increased year over year. We've done phenomenally well. We've weathered some big storms. The 2008 global market crash did not affect us as badly because of the strength of our market, partly because of our banking practices, but in large part the value that this market brings to its buyers, the people that invest in it, right? So that is, by and large, I think the biggest thing, the biggest advantage. And additionally, zero taxes, for folks that do purchase property here, you don't pay, any recurring taxes other than the stamp duty for the purchase of the property. There are no additional assessment taxes or property taxes, and then that is an advantage as well. The other thing that a lot of people don't realize is absolute title. We're in a jurisdiction that guarantees absolute title. All right, lots of places don't. So it's yours to pass on to your heirs and successors if you're a king or queen. But you can do that here. And then we also have we guarantee title.
Another one of my guests on Let's Talk TCI Real Estate was Mr. D'Amico Dean. He is a passionate young man who has the constituency of Blue Hills to heart. He should be applauded for his newest venture, which is Bay Road Development. This development would comprise of 33 homes plus commercial buildings. In addition, would be 12 beachfront villas. Here is a clip describing the homes and the reason for his decision to embark on such a venture.
This development there's two phases. There's a first phase and a second phase. The first phase compromises of 23 buildings. And so we have a commercial plaza that's gonna have shop that's gonna have shop spaces, and then we have 21. Well, let me just say it like this: the entire development compromises of 33 homes and a commercial building, and so you have, like I say, a commercial building that has shops and so forth, and then you have 12 high-end villas that's going to be sitting on the beachfront, because 2.09 acres actually sits on the beachfront, and then 6.34 acres sits across the road inland. And so across the road inland, you're going to have 21. We're going to have 21 affordable homes. We actually, in addition to that, we actually have a multi-purpose court. So it's going to be a basketball court, it's going to be a tennis court. And then we have a playground area with swing sets and all the amenities. This is a modern development. And so it was my intention to transform the area like never seen before.
A subject that touched home with many of us in the Turks and Caicos Islands is generational land. It was so good to have Mr. George Mizik on the show to explain the process of dealing with generational property. He spoke about who has the right to administrate on generational property and also used the opportunity to clarify the difference between probate and administration. Hear for yourself his definition and also find time to rewatch this segment as it is jam-packed with vital information.
probate is the process whereby there is a will that expresses the wishes of the what we call the testator, the person who dies, as to who gets what. So when you hear probate in a legal sense, that means there is a will involved, and that process can go through the court, not necessarily, but that process has been undertaken, and someone is applying to probate an estate. That means there's a will, they've identified, they found the will, either someone had it, a lawyer or a family member had the will, or they found the will. And when we talk about administration or a personal representative, administration is usually in what we call intestacy, where intestacy is a concept where there is no will and the person dies and their estate is administered according to what the law says. In the Turks and Caicos, we have an intestacy ordinance that says if I die, who gets what, who is entitled to apply, etc. So it lays it out. The government basically tells you where this land is going, as opposed to you saying where I want it to go.
We would see from time to time a notice of public auction in the newspaper. Do you know how the process works? Did you know that you do not have to be a cash buyer in order to participate and bid for a property? Listen to Ms. Louise Malcolm as she explains further.
You don't. Obviously, that would help. As it's a short window for completing the transaction, it would be preferable if the purchasers had pre-approval of a loan, so that when they're commencing the transaction, they don't have to now go and seek financing. They already have something already put in place, so that the completion of the transaction is pretty straightforward.
Okay.
And we usually try to advertise at least 3 to 4 weeks prior to the auction to give people a chance to obviously see the ads and have a look at the properties that they could be interested in, and then speak to their banks if necessary, so that things can be put in place in as much as possible before the auction takes place.
Among my guests was the Minister of Infrastructure, Planning and Development, the Honorable Akira Mizik. Amidst her busy schedule, she found the time to include the show in her day, which I am grateful for. She shared so much information about the new initiatives that are currently being done and what is scheduled for the future. These included large-scale and minor projects, inclusive of all the islands. It is always good to know that none of the islands are being left behind in terms of development. Here is a small clip from that show. I would suggest that you view this show in its entirety, as there is much information, informative information, to be heard.
So the great thing about real estate in the Turks and Caicos Islands, as you know, being a real estate expert and one who has had an opportunity to see the immense boom in the property market prices that persons are paying in these islands for private real estate holdings. As a government, we have to ensure that we, the Turks and Caicos Islander, does not lose out on owning a piece of the Turks and Caicos Islands land dream. So one of the initiatives that we heavily campaigned on, that I am now responsible for, is creating a housing authority that will have 3 distinct functions attached to it. One, seeking to protect renters from unscrupulous landlords, or as we call in some areas, slumlords, who provide the bare minimum, who have stringent rules on how they evict their tenants. And so we're looking at some form of renters protection legislation that will come under this ministry over the next 18 months. One of the other areas that we're significantly putting a lot of time and energy, and probably one of the things that has really kept me very busy over the last few months, is the recreation and staffing of the housing department. Now, that department in our ministry is focusing on a housing strategy for Turks and Caicos Islanders to own their homes or a condo or an apartment here in the islands that can be subsidized by the government. And part of that program will, over the next few weeks, have stakeholder meetings. We do have several generational land subsets here where persons will never develop them. There's no point passing down 100 acres to 2 children who may just then sell it off to expatriate developers when we as a government can look at purchasing those large tracts of land to create a proper housing stock here in these islands for Turks and Caicos Islanders. We are no longer going to be moving down the path of just giving you a parcel of land and hoping you develop it in a framework. We're looking at doing turnkey projects and placing people in homes. So it's not about creating the house, but it's about giving you the opportunity to have a home and a mixed use community. And so some of these projects will be single family homes, multi-family homes, condo apartment style developments that we as islanders can get our foot in the door. And last but not least, as part of the housing authority that we are creating, we're looking at a way that we can assist persons with private land purchase and or upgrades to their foreclosed properties, something similar that would have been done through the housing program at TC Invest, whilst you and I are probably away at university, that really gave a lot of Turks and Caicos Islanders an opportunity to borrow and be able to build their Turks and Caicos Islands dream.
It is not easy to stand up and express your opinion when there is a chance that the feelings of others would be hurt. But Mr. Ed Forbes, an avid writer, expounded on his written article about protecting generational wealth in the Turks and Caicos Islands. One of the noteworthy points he mentioned is that generational property is the primary way for millenniums to accumulate wealth in these islands. He also discussed how we need to be educated on the struggles that our forefathers went through to acquire the land that were left for us so that we can appreciate it better. Here's a clip with some of the suggestions on some of the other areas other than selling land that can be considered to diversify our economy.
Yeah, before I elaborate on that, keep in mind, I have nothing against foreign investors.
Right.
Okay, my wife is a foreigner. Okay, and I was a foreigner in America for a number of years.
Right.
All right, so we love foreigners, and because I think, like as you mentioned, they play an extremely important role in the growth and development of our country, and we certainly should be very appreciative of that.
Right.
But at some point you have to say enough is enough when it comes to selling off our crown land and our generational properties. We have to start looking at a more diverse portfolio, rather than just selling sand, sea, and sun. Let's face it. There are several other alternatives, I think, that foreign investors can start exploring. Okay, I would say areas like light manufacturing, maybe recycling on a larger scale. Right, I know we do a little bit of it now, but not to the extent that we should, considering all the recyclables, recycled materials that we have with carnival ships and all these resorts and hotels.
That's a very good point. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So we can expand on that. We can maybe have these foreign investors partner with the co-op sustainable fishing partnership. We're living in an island, and we always have a shortage of fish, and that's because we haven't invested in large boats where we can go out and maybe spend a week like the folks used to do back in the day.
Right.
Our population have grown, so we don't have enough. So I think that will be a good business for a foreign investor to take a look at, and maybe even call centers. Right, and the reason why I said call centers is because we have a lot of unskilled laborers in our country, and I think a call center would be ideal for them to take a look into, right? Because
I also had a conversation with Mr. Dominic Durham. It was educational for me as an agent. But also, I want to say that I am proud of his achievement, as a young quantity surveyor. He mentioned that the Turks and Caicos Islands is in need of additional quantity surveyors, and he is willing to mentor others. Hats off to Mr. Durham. Here is a clip with him explaining the role of a quantity surveyor in your building and construction project.
To define, a quantity surveyor is someone who protects the financial interests of a client for any project. So basically from inception to completion of a construction project, we are responsible for one, costing or estimating or giving a client a budget for that project. We are responsible for making sure that that project is executed within that budget. We do the contract management side of things to ensure that the project runs smoothly and we achieve value for money. And the project is completed on time and within budget. And we also do cost control, cost analysis, risk assessments of a project in terms of financial. So to summarize, it's basically the accountants of a construction project. We protect the client's financial interests. It goes a bit farther than that. Most quantity surveyors tend to go on and be project managers themselves. You can be an adjudicator, you can be an estimator or a mediator. So there are different aspects of quantity surveying that we can dive into, but predominantly we are the numbers guys. So we would, from you get a design from an architect, which is the first step. The architect then gives that design to the quantity surveyors. We would then develop a project budget. So we would cost all of the elements. So we can basically break that project down into the number of nails you need and how much it costs. So we would give a detailed cost estimate once the development is designed at final stage.
Ethics in all profession is crucial to its success. Dr. Bernard Young did an awesome job explaining ethics and real estate to us. Listen to his short but powerful statement about what is ethics.
Ethics implies that we are in possession of an awareness and a consciousness of our social, corporate responsibility that's greater than our interest in pure profits and our interest in the profit motivation only.
Another important conversation that was had on Let's Talk TCI Real Estate was the role of Invest Turks and Caicos in real estate in the Turks and Caicos Islands. Invest TCI is a good place to start if you are not sure when it comes to investing in the TCI, be it international or domestic investors. Hear for yourself from Mr. Salik Garland the main objectives of Invest TCI and listen to his introduction of the small business support offerings from the Invest TCI department.
Invest TCI is essentially an investment promotion agency. Our main responsibility is to promote foreign and direct investment here in the Turks and Caicos Islands, but to do it in a way that will basically grow the economy in a way that will be impactful, beneficially impactful to Turks and Caicos Islanders. The reason that is very important, particularly on the economic side of things, is because of how impactful investment projects can be to the Turks and Caicos Islands. For example, a hotel investment project would contribute to import duties, revenue to the government, which is the largest source of revenue for the government. They would also contribute heavily towards accommodation tax revenues to the government, stamp duty revenue, work permits, business licenses, tenant fees. There's also NIB and NHIP revenues that would be generated as well. So investment projects can be incredibly beneficial to the country. Those economic benefits will also spill over into some very impactful social initiatives, very much dependent on, the terms of agreement and things that are negotiated within an agreement. Projects can be super impactful and beneficial to the country.
Yes.
The program is The MSME program is a program that provides support to small businesses. Unfortunately, the program isn't one that provides financing to small businesses, and that's very important to understand. Gratefully, the support that MSME program provides is financial support, but by no means is that financing. For example, if your business requires $80,000 in capital expenditure, the program wouldn't finance $80,000. It's just not at that level, but it will provide support up to $10,000 in you achieving that 80,000. Providing that you are in one of our priority areas, one of the priority areas. Areas include agriculture, fisheries, tourism activities, particularly within the family islands, technology, music, that sort of things. And if you really adjust those sectors that I just listed, you would realize that those sectors traditionally we haven't exploited. What it intends to do is to develop those sectors, encourage business activity within those sectors, and business activity within those sectors, which is very important.
I heard you mention about other islands, so I'm glad you said that. So this small business program is not restricted to Providenciales, but the entire Turks and Caicos Islands.
100%.
Before I wrap it up, I must say that I had the planning department on the show last year as well as 2 times for this year. And in the name of updating the population on the do's and don'ts of the planning department, as well as during the consultation project of the new development plan. And finally, just as the new development plan launched in order to sensitize the public of what was to come. This information is now available on the planning department website. Thank you to Mr. Regional Childs, Mr. Glasgow, and others for keeping us informed and in the know. I cannot end this year without thanking those who have diligently followed the show and encouraged me along the way. I am forever grateful, and I hope that I can be an inspiration for you. As Mr. Drexel Seema says, rise up and take a stand. Until next time, I say, stay safe and remain blessed. See you next year. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this show belong solely to Let's Talk TCI Real Estate and not that of Keller Williams TCI or any of its affiliates. Any action you take upon the information provided on this show is strictly at your own risk, and Let's Talk TCI Real Estate guest or host will not be liable for any losses and damages in connection with the use of the material. I am not an investment advisor, broker, or dealer.